he creative genius behind their most iconic designs. James handled the business side, contracts, finances, client relationships. It was a partnership that had seemed perfect, both professionally and personally. James entered with his characteristic confidence, his salt and pepper hair perfectly styled, his navy suit tailored to perfection. At 45, he still possessed the charm that had initially drawn Victoria to him all those years ago when they were both hungry young architects with more ambition than capital. "Morning, Vic," he said, using the nickname only he was allowed to use. His smile was warm, reaching his green eyes in a way that still made her heart skip slightly. "James," she nodded, gesturing to the conference table where architectural plans for their latest project, a revolutionary eco-friendly skyscraper called the Prometheus, were spread out. They spent the next hour discussing modifications to the design, their professional chemistry as strong as ever. James suggested cost-cutting measures that wouldn't compromise the integrity of Victoria's vision, while she proposed aesthetic enhancements that would increase the building's market value. It was a dance they'd perfected over the years. "By the way," James said as he gathered his papers, "I'll be in Boston for the next 3 days. The Harrington Group wants to discuss that waterfront development." Victoria nodded. "The preliminary designs are in the shared drive. Don't let them lowball us on the sustainability features." He leaned over and kissed her cheek, a gesture both professional and intimate. "When have I ever let anyone shortchange your brilliance?" After he left, Victoria returned to her drafting table, losing herself in the precise lines and angles of her work. Architecture had always been her first love, the one constant in a life that had seen its share of upheavals. Raised by a single mother in Queens, she'd clawed her way to the top through scholarships, internships, and sheer determination. Her phone buzzed. A text from her best friend, Sophia Brooks. "Lunch today? That new place on 5th? Victoria smiled and replied, "Can't today." "Rain check?" The rest of the morning passed in a blur of client calls and design reviews. Around noon, Emma knocked on her door. "Ms. Sterling, Robert Lancaster from Lancaster Holdings is here. He says it's urgent and personal." Victoria frowned. Lancaster Holdings was one of their biggest competitors. Robert Lancaster, its CEO, was known for his aggressive business tactics and his attempts to poach talent from other firms. "Send him in, but let him know I have a hard stop in 15 minutes." Robert Lancaster entered like a storm cloud. In his 60s, he was still an imposing figure, tall, broad-shouldered, with steel gray hair and cold blue eyes. His expression was uncharacteristically sympathetic, which immediately put Victoria on edge. "Victoria," he began, settling into the chair across from her desk. "I'm here as a courtesy. Professional respect, you might say. Robert, whatever you're selling, I'm not interested." He held up a hand. "I'm not here to sell anything. I'm here because, well, there's no easy way to say this. Your partner, James Mitchell, has been in negotiations with me for the past 6 months." Victoria's expression didn't change, but her fingers tightened imperceptibly on her pen. "If you're trying to poach James." "Not poach," Robert interrupted. "Merge. Or rather, absorb. James has been systematically preparing to sell his stake in Sterling Architecture Group to Lancaster Holdings. But that's not all." He pulled out a tablet and slid it across the desk. On the screen was a series of emails between James and someone named Isabella Romano, Lancaster Holdings' chief legal officer. Victoria read, her blood gradually turning to ice. "The Prometheus designs are already copied and archived. Once the sale goes through, Victoria won't have any claim to them. The non-compete clause in our partnership agreement will prevent her from working on anything similar for 5 years. Make sure the patent applications are filed under my name only. Victoria trusts me completely, she hasn't reviewed the paperwork in years. After the merger, we can force her out. Without her shares and with the non-compete, she'll be finished in New York. Victoria's hand remained steady as she scrolled through email after email, each one a dagger to the heart. But it was the last exchange that truly destroyed her. Isabella, are you sure she won't suspect anything? You've been together for so long. James, Victoria sees what she wants to see. She's brilliant with buildings, not people. Besides, after tomorrow night, she'll be too distracted to notice anything. Isabella, tomorrow night? James, I'm proposing. The ring cost more than she'd ever expect me to spend, but it's an investment. A married partner is less likely to dig into financials before the merger. Victoria carefully set the tablet down, her movements precise and controlled. Why are you showing me this? Robert leaned back. Because James Mitchell is a snake, and I don't do business with snakes. I've terminated all negotiations with him. But more importantly, because nobody deserves this kind of betrayal. I may be ruthless in business, Victoria, but I have principles. And what do you want in return for this information? Nothing. Consider it professional courtesy. One CEO to another. He stood. You have about a week before James files those patents. Whatever you're going to do it fast. After Robert left, Victoria sat in perfect stillness for exactly 3 minutes. Then she picked up her phone and made 3 calls. The first was to Alexander Reed, the best corporate lawyer in Manhattan. The second was to Nathan Cross, a private investigator known for his discretion and thoroughness. The third was to Sophia Brooks. Cancel your afternoon. I need you. Sophia arrived at Victoria's office within the hour, her concern evident in her hurried appearance. A successful investment banker with Morgan Chase, Sophia had been Victoria's friend since their Columbia Business School days. She was the only person Victoria trusted completely. What's wrong? Sophia asked, noting Victoria's rigid posture and the unusual tightness around her eyes. Victoria wordlessly handed her the tablet. As Sophia read, her expression morphed from confusion to shock to fury. That bastard, she breathed. That absolute bastard. How long? 6 months, apparently. Maybe longer. Victoria's voice was eerily calm. 6 months of lying to my face every single day. 6 months of planning to destroy everything I've built. What are you going to do? I'm going to destroy him. The words were spoken without heat, which somehow made them more chilling. Legally. Ethically. But completely. Alexander Reed arrived shortly after, a distinguished man in his 50s with prematurely silver hair and sharp hazel eyes. He reviewed the evidence with the clinical detachment of someone who'd seen every type of corporate betrayal imaginable. First things first, he said, setting down the tablet. We need to secure your assets and intellectual property immediately. Every design, every patent application, every piece of work product needs to be documented and protected. Do you have copies of your partnership agreement? Victoria pulled up the documents on her computer. Alexander studied them carefully, occasionally making notes on his legal pad. There's a clause here, he said finally, that might be our ace. In the event of breach of fiduciary duty, the offending partner forfeits all rights to shared intellectual property and must sell their stake at a predetermined rate, significantly below market value. James wrote that clause, Victoria said with bitter irony. He insisted on it to protect us from corporate espionage. Then he's about to be hoisted by his own petard. But we need proof, concrete, undeniable proof of his breach. Nathan Cross arrived as the sun was setting, casting golden light across the office. He was younger than Victoria expected, perhaps 35, with an unremarkable face that probably helped him blend into crowds. His eyes, however, were sharp and intelligent. Ms. Sterling, he said, shaking her hand firmly. Alexander filled me in on the basics. What exactly do you need from me? Everything, Victoria replied. I need to know every meeting James has taken, every document he's signed, every secret he's hidden. I need enough evidence to bury him in court. Nathan nodded. I'll need access to your office systems, with your permission. Security footage, email servers, phone records if possible. Emma can give you whatever you need, Victoria said, then paused. Can I trust Emma? I've already had her checked, Nathan said, producing a slim folder. Emma Sinclair is clean. In fact, she's been concerned about some irregularities she's noticed in Mr. Mitchell's expense reports but didn't know how to bring them to your attention. That night, Victoria returned to the penthouse she shared with James on the Upper East Side. It was a challenge to act normally, to smile when he kissed her hello, to listen to his stories about the Boston trip he hadn't actually taken. You seem tired, James observed over dinner, Thai takeout from their favorite restaurant. Just the Prometheus project, Victoria replied, forcing herself to take another bite despite her churning stomach. The environmental impact study came back with some concerns. I'm sure you'll figure it out. You always do. He reached across the table to squeeze her hand. That's why I love you. The word love felt like acid on her skin. Later, as James slept beside her, Victoria lay awake staring at the ceiling. 15 years. They'd been together 15 years. She thought back to their early days, the tiny office they'd shared in Brooklyn, working 18-hour days, dreaming of the empire they'd build together. When had it gone wrong? When had she become just another asset to be leveraged and discarded? Her phone vibrated with a text from Nathan, check your secure email. You need to see this. Victoria slipped out of bed and went to her home office, locking the door behind her. The email contained a video file from the security camera in James's office, dated 3 weeks ago. Isabella Romano was there, and they were not discussing business. Victoria watched with clinical detachment as James kissed Isabella, as they moved to the leather couch she'd helped him pick out, She closed the video. She'd seen enough. Another email from Nathan contained financial records. James had been siphoning money from their joint accounts for months, hiding it in offshore accounts. He'd also been charging personal expenses, jewelry, trips, hotel rooms, to the company accounts, all for Isabella. The jewelry receipt that caught her eye was dated 6 months ago. A Cartier necklace, $50,000. She remembered James saying he'd lost a major client that month and they'd need to tighten their belts. Victoria opened a new document and began typing. Not a resignation letter or a confrontation script, but a plan. A detailed, methodical plan for everything that would come next. The next morning, Victoria arrived at the office at 5 a.m., 2 hours before her usual time. She needed to secure certain files and documents before James arrived. Emma was already there, looking nervous but determined. Miss Sterling, I want you to know that whatever's happening, I'm on your side. I've seen the way Mr. Mitchell has been treating you, and it's not right. Victoria studied her assistant carefully. Emma was 28, brilliant, and had been with the company for 3 years. She'd proven herself invaluable time and again. Emma, what I'm about to ask you to do might seem strange, but I need you to trust me. Can you do that? Absolutely. I need you to create backup copies of every single design file, patent application, and client contract from the past 5 years. Store them on a secure server that only you and I can access. And I need it done today. Emma nodded. I'll get started immediately. Victoria spent the morning in back-to-back meetings with Alexander Reed's team. They were building a case that would not only protect Victoria's interests but potentially bring criminal charges against James for embezzlement and fraud. We found more, Alexander reported. James has been in contact with 3 of your major clients, offering them better deals if they switched to Lancaster Holdings after the merger. That's a direct violation of his fiduciary duty and potentially criminal corporate espionage. What about the patents? Victoria asked. Nathan's investigator found that James filed preliminary applications last week, but they're incomplete. We can file superseding applications with the full designs and your documentation as the primary creator. It'll trigger a review, but with the evidence we have, you'll retain ownership. That afternoon, Victoria met with Michael Brennan, CEO of Brennan Development Group, one of Sterling Architecture's biggest clients. "Michael, I need to ask you something, and I need complete honesty," Victoria began. Michael, a man in his 60s with kind eyes and a genuine smile, leaned forward. "Victoria, you designed my daughter's art museum. You have my complete loyalty. What's going on? Has James Mitchell approached you about moving your contracts to another firm?" Michael's expression darkened. "How did you know?" "He called me last week, said there were going to be some changes at Sterling and that I might want to consider my options. I told him the only reason Brennan Development works with Sterling is because of you. Would you be willing to put that in writing? I'll do you one better. I'll send you the recording of the call. New York is a one-party consent state, and I record all my business calls." By the end of the week, Victoria had quietly secured affidavits from 7 major clients, all stating that they worked with Sterling Architecture Group specifically for Victoria's designs and would leave if she did. She'd also documented every design, every innovation, every creative decision that had come from her over the past 15 years. Nathan Cross had been equally productive. His investigation had uncovered a web of deceit that went deeper than Victoria had imagined. James had been planning this for over a year. He'd gradually shifted responsibilities, ensuring he controlled more of the business side while keeping Victoria focused on design. He'd even manipulated their assistant into giving him sole access to certain financial accounts. But perhaps the most painful discovery was personal. Nathan had found evidence that James's relationship with Isabella had begun 2 years ago, not 6 months. 2 years of deception. 2 years of coming home to Victoria while maintaining another relationship. "There's more," Nathan said during one of their meetings. "Isabella Romano isn't just Lancaster's chief legal officer. She's Robert Lancaster's daughter. Different last name from a previous marriage." Victoria processed this information. "So Robert Lancaster knew about the affair?" "No, actually. From what I can tell, he's been kept in the dark. Isabella and James were planning to present the merger as a done deal. Lancaster would get Sterling Architecture's assets and clients, Isabella would get James and a significant position in the merged company. And I would get nothing. Less than nothing. With the non-compete clause, you wouldn't even be able to practice architecture in New York for 5 years. That weekend, James surprised Victoria with a romantic dinner at Lou Bernardine, their favorite restaurant. She knew what was coming, the proposal he'd mentioned in his emails. Part of her wanted to refuse to go, to confront him right then and there. But Alexander had advised patience. "We need him to show his hand," he'd said. "The proposal is part of the fraud. Let him dig his own grave." So Victoria put on the black cocktail dress James loved, styled her hair the way he preferred, and smiled through dinner as he talked about their future together. When he got down on one knee in the middle of the restaurant, pulling out a Tiffany box, Victoria felt strangely detached, as if she were watching a movie of someone else's life. "Victoria Sterling," James said, his voice carrying across the now silent restaurant, "you've been my partner, my best friend, my everything for 15 years. Will you marry me?" The ring was enormous, a 5-carat diamond surrounded by smaller stones. It was ostentatious and nothing like what Victoria would have chosen for herself. But then, James didn't really know her at all, did he? "Yes," she said, because saying no would tip her hand too early. The restaurant erupted in applause. James slipped the ring onto her finger, and it felt like a shackle. Monday morning arrived with unusual clarity. Victoria stood in her walk-in closet, selecting her outfit with deliberate care. Today was the day she would begin her counteroffensive. She chose a white silk blouse and a black Tom Ford suit that meant business, paired with the Louboutin heels that added 3 inches to her 5'7" frame. The engagement ring sat heavy on her finger. She'd wear it for now, a prop in the performance. At the office, James was in high spirits, showing off their engagement to anyone who would listen. Victoria watched him work the room at their Monday morning staff meeting, noting how he basked in the congratulations while she remained seated, reviewing architectural plans. "We should celebrate properly," James announced. "Drinks tonight for everyone, on the company." Victoria saw Emma's slight frown. Company funds for personal celebrations was against policy, a policy James himself had written. But no one else seemed to notice or care. After the meeting, Victoria retreated to her office where Christopher Vale was waiting. Christopher was her second-in-command, a brilliant architect in his own right who joined the firm 5 years ago from Foster Plus Partners in London. At 38, he had the kind of innovative vision that reminded Victoria of herself at that age. "Congratulations on your engagement," he said, though his tone suggested condolences might be more appropriate. "Thank you." Victoria studied him carefully. "Christopher, I need to ask you something in complete confidence." "Of course. If there were to be changes in the leadership structure of this firm, where would your loyalties lie?" Christopher didn't hesitate. "With you. Always. You're the reason I left London. James is a decent businessman, but you're the visionary. Without you, this is just another corporate architecture firm. Even if supporting me meant taking significant professional risk?" "Even then." Victoria nodded slowly. "I'm promoting you to senior design director, effective immediately. You'll be taking over the Prometheus project." Christopher's eyes widened. "But that's your—" "I have my reasons. Trust me." That afternoon, Alexander Reed called with urgent news. "We have a problem. James has moved up his timeline. My sources at Lancaster Holdings say he's planning to announce the merger next Monday." "That's in a week," Victoria said, her mind racing. "Which means we need to act now. I'm filing the breach of fiduciary duty claim this afternoon. The moment I do, James will know you're on to him." "Do it," Victoria said without hesitation. "I'm ready." She spent the rest of the day methodically preparing. Every important file was backed up. Every client was discreetly contacted. Every piece of evidence was catalogued and secured. At 4 p.m., James burst into her office, his face purple with rage, a legal document crushed in his fist. "What the hell is this?" he snarled, slamming the papers on her desk. Victoria calmly removed her engagement ring and placed it on top of the papers. "I believe it's self-explanatory. You're suing me? Your fiancé? Your partner?" "My ex-fiancé," Victoria corrected. "And soon-to-be ex-partner." "Did you really think I wouldn't find out, James? About Isabella? About Lancaster Holdings? About the patents you tried to steal?" For a moment, James's mask slipped, revealing something ugly underneath. Then he recovered, his voice turning silky smooth, the tone he used when he was about to close a difficult deal. "Victoria, sweetheart, you're misunderstanding the situation. The Lancaster deal is for us, for our future. And Isabella, that's nothing. A mistake. You're the one I love." Victoria laughed, a sound devoid of humor. "You've been having an affair with her for 2 years, James. You've been stealing from our company to fund that affair. You've been planning to destroy my career so you could ride off into the sunset with Robert Lancaster's daughter. So please, spare me the performance." James's expression hardened. "You can't prove any of that." "Actually, I can." Victoria pulled out a folder and slid it across the desk. "Security footage of you and Isabella in this very office. Financial records showing embezzlement. Emails detailing your plan to steal my designs. Recorded conversations with clients where you violated your fiduciary duty. Would you like me to continue? James went pale as he flipped through the evidence. This is illegal. You hacked my emails. You violated my privacy. Everything was obtained legally. You seem to have forgotten that as CEO, I have legal access to all company communications and records. And as for the security footage, well, you're the one who insisted we install cameras everywhere after that break-in last year. I'll destroy you, James said quietly, dangerously. I'll make sure you never work in this city again. You're welcome to try. Victoria stood, her composure perfect. But I think you'll find that difficult to do from prison. Oh yes, the district attorney is very interested in the embezzlement charges. Agent Sarah Mills from the FBI will be contacting you about the interstate fraud. Your assets have been frozen as of, she checked her watch, 30 minutes ago. James lunged across the desk, but Victoria stepped back smoothly. Security is already on their way up. You have 10 minutes to clear out your office. Take only personal items. Everything else is evidence. As if on cue, 2 security guards appeared in the doorway, followed by Emma, who was recording everything on her phone. You'll regret this, James spat as the guards escorted him out. I'll take everything from you. You already tried, Victoria called after him. And you failed. The brownstone in Brooklyn Heights had been Victoria's first major purchase, bought 10 years ago when the neighborhood was still transitioning. She'd never told James about it, keeping it as her personal sanctuary and rental property. Now it became her war room. Alexander Reed had assembled a formidable legal team. Besides himself, there was Lauren Phillips, a brilliant young prosecutor-turned-corporate lawyer who specialized in financial crimes, Daniel Cooper, an intellectual property expert who'd successfully defended against 3 major patent theft cases, and Rebecca Stone, whose expertise in criminal law would be crucial for the embezzlement charges. They gathered around the dining table Victoria had converted into a command center, documents and laptops covering every surface. James has hired Kirkland and Ellis, Alexander reported. They're good, but they're working with a losing hand. The evidence is overwhelming. What's our timeline? Victoria asked, reviewing the latest financial reports Nathan had compiled. The emergency injunction hearing is Thursday, Lauren said. That'll freeze the patent applications and prevent James from accessing any company assets. The criminal charges will be filed simultaneously. What about Isabella Romano? Victoria asked. She's lawyered up too, Rebecca reported. But here's the interesting part, Robert Lancaster has cut her off completely. Apparently, he's furious about being used in this scheme. He's offered to testify on our behalf. Victoria felt a grim satisfaction. Good. What about the clients? Daniel pulled up a spreadsheet. Of the firm's 43 major clients, 38 have signed affidavits stating they'll follow you wherever you go. The other 5 are sitting on the fence, waiting to see how this plays out. And the employees? Christopher Vail has been invaluable, Alexander said. He's kept the staff calm and productive. Only 3 people have resigned, all from James's team. Victoria's phone buzzed with a text from Sophia Brooks, check the news. Now. She turned on the television to find James being led out of his apartment building in handcuffs, photographers everywhere. The headline scrolled across the bottom, prominent architect arrested for corporate embezzlement and fraud. How did the press, Victoria began. Emma appeared in the doorway, looking pleased with herself. I may have made a few calls. James always said there's no such thing as bad publicity. Let's test that theory. The story exploded across business media. By evening, it was trending on social media with hashtag corporate betrayal and hashtag justice for Victoria. The New York Times business section ran a detailed piece about the rise and fall of James Mitchell, complete with a timeline of his deceptions. That night, alone in her Brooklyn sanctuary, Victoria finally allowed herself to feel. The rage came first, white-hot and consuming. She threw the engagement ring across the room, where it skittered under the couch. Then came the grief, not for James but for the relationship she thought they'd had, the future she'd believed in. She called her mother in Florida, finally telling her everything. "Oh, sweetheart," her mother said softly. "I never liked him, you know. Too smooth. Too practiced. Real love isn't that polished. Why didn't you say anything? Would you have listened? You had to learn this lesson yourself. But Victoria, don't let this make you hard. The best revenge isn't destruction, it's living well." Thursday arrived gray and drizzling, pathetic fallacy at its finest. Victoria dressed carefully, a navy Stella McCartney suit that projected authority without aggression, minimal jewelry, her hair in a low bun. She looked like what she was, a serious professional who'd been wronged but wouldn't be victimized. The courthouse was surrounded by media. Victoria walked through them without comment, Alexander and her team flanking her like a protective phalanx. James was already there, looking haggard despite his expensive suit. Isabella sat behind him, her perfect facade showing cracks. She'd been fired from Lancaster Holdings and was facing her own fraud charges. Judge Catherine Walsh, a woman in her 60s with a reputation for no-nonsense jurisprudence, reviewed the documents before her. "Mr. Mitchell," she began, "the evidence presented suggests a pattern of deliberate deception, theft, and breach of fiduciary duty that is quite frankly breathtaking in its scope. Do you have anything to say?" James's lawyer, a slick-looking man named Marcus Chen, stood. "Your Honor, my client admits to certain lapses in judgment but disputes the characterization of his actions as criminal. The partnership agreement allows for—" "Mr. Chen," the judge interrupted, "I've read the partnership agreement. I've also seen the emails where your client explicitly discusses circumventing that agreement. Would you like me to read them aloud for the court reporter?" Marcus Chen sat down. The hearing lasted 3 hours. Victoria testified about discovering the betrayal, her voice steady despite reliving the pain. Christopher Vail testified about James's systematic attempts to undermine Victoria's leadership. Michael Brennan testified about James's breach of client confidentiality. But the most damaging testimony came from Robert Lancaster himself. "Mr. Mitchell approached me 6 months ago," he said, his voice carrying the authority of decades in business. He presented himself as the sole decision-maker at Sterling Architecture Group. He offered to sell me proprietary designs and client lists that clearly belonged to the partnership. When I questioned the legality, he assured me that Ms. Sterling was unaware of her rights and would be easily manipulated into compliance. "And what was your response?" the judge asked. "I terminated all discussions and informed Ms. Sterling of the betrayal. I may be a tough competitor, but I don't engage in theft." The judge's ruling was swift and decisive. James's assets remained frozen. The patent applications were invalidated. He was ordered to sell his stake in Sterling Architecture Group to Victoria at the predetermined rate set in their partnership agreement, a fraction of its actual value. And the criminal charges would proceed. As they left the courthouse, James caught Victoria's arm. "This isn't over," he hissed. Victoria calmly removed his hand. "Yes, it is. You're done, James. In this city, in this industry, you're finished. You think you've won? I'll make sure everyone knows what a cold, controlling—" "Mr. Mitchell," Alexander Reed interrupted smoothly, "any further contact with my client will be considered harassment and will be added to the criminal charges. I suggest you walk away." James stormed off, but not before Victoria saw the fear in his eyes. He'd lost everything, his company, his reputation, his freedom was in jeopardy, and even Isabella, who was notably absent as he left alone. The weeks following the hearing were a whirlwind of legal procedures and business restructuring. Victoria officially bought out James's stake, becoming the sole owner of what she renamed Sterling Design Group. The name change was symbolic, no longer about partnership but about her singular vision. She promoted Christopher Vail to Chief Operating Officer, Emma Sinclair to Chief of Staff, and brought in new talent to fill the gaps left by James's departure. The office felt different, lighter, more creative, more collaborative without James's hidden agendas poisoning the atmosphere. "We've had 3 new client inquiries this week," Christopher reported during their Monday morning meeting. "Apparently, the publicity has actually helped. Everyone wants to work with the architect who stood up to corporate betrayal." Victoria smiled wryly. Silver linings. The Prometheus project continued under her direct supervision. Without James's cost-cutting interference, she was able to implement her full vision, a building that would set new standards for sustainable architecture. One evening, while working late on the designs, Nathan Cross appeared in her office. "I thought my contract was complete," Victoria said, looking up from her drafting table. "It is. This is personal." He seemed uncharacteristically nervous. "I wanted to make sure you were okay." Victoria considered the question. "I'm getting there. It's strange, grieving someone who never really existed. The James the First loved was a fiction." "People show you who they want you to see," Nathan said. "It's not your fault you believed it. Isn't it? I'm supposed to be smart. Observant. How did I miss this for so long?" Nathan moved closer, his expression sympathetic. "Because you're also human. And humans want to believe in love, in partnership, in trust. That's not a weakness, Victoria. That's what makes us human." They talked for hours, the conversation shifting from the case to architecture to travel to books. Victoria found herself laughing, really laughing, for the first time in months. Nathan had a dry wit and an unexpected depth of knowledge about art and design. "I should go," he said finally, glancing at his watch. "It's nearly midnight." "Thank you," Victoria said. "For everything. You saved my life, my professional life, at least. You saved yourself. I just provided the tools." After he left, Victoria stood at her window, looking out at the city lights. For the first time since discovering James's betrayal, she felt something other than anger or pain. She felt possibility. James's criminal trial began in late autumn, the trees in Central Park turning gold and crimson as if nature itself was marking the transition. Victoria attended every day, not out of vengeance but out of a need for closure. The prosecution, led by Assistant District Attorney Justin Carter, methodically laid out the case. Financial records showed James had embezzled nearly $2 million over 18 months. Security footage and emails revealed the depth of his deception. Former clients testified about his attempts to poach them illegally. Isabella Romano had made a deal, testifying against James in exchange for reduced charges. On the stand, she was a different woman from the confident executive who'd planned to steal Victoria's life. She looked diminished, her designer suit unable to hide her fall from grace. "Mr. Mitchell told me Victoria was emotionally unstable," Isabella testified. "He said she was holding the company back, that she was impossible to work with." He painted himself as the victim, trapped in a business and personal relationship he couldn't escape. "And you believed him?" the prosecutor asked. "I wanted to believe him. I was in love with him. Or I thought I was. Now I realize I was in love with the image he presented, the future he promised." Victoria felt an unexpected kinship with Isabella in that moment. They'd both been deceived by the same man, both manipulated by someone who was expert at showing people what they wanted to see. James's defense was weak. His lawyer tried to argue that the money was rightfully his, that the patents were joint property, that Victoria had been aware of and approved his actions. But the evidence was overwhelming. When James took the stand in his own defense, Victoria saw him clearly for perhaps the first time. Without his charm and confidence, he was just a middle-aged man who'd wanted more than he'd earned and had been willing to destroy someone who loved him to get it. "I built that company," James insisted. "Victoria might have designed the buildings, but I brought in the clients, managed the finances, made the deals. Without me, she'd still be drawing pretty pictures that never got built." "So you felt justified in stealing from the company?" the prosecutor asked. "I took what was mine." "And Miss Sterling? Did you feel justified in deceiving her personally as well as professionally?" James's jaw tightened. Victoria got what she wanted from the relationship. Status, connections, someone to handle the parts of business she couldn't be bothered with. Victoria felt the words like physical blows, but she kept her expression neutral. Beside her, Sophia Brooks squeezed her hand. "He's lying," Sophia whispered. "He's trying to hurt you because he knows he's lost." The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours. Guilty on all counts. James Mitchell was sentenced to 5 years in federal prison and ordered to pay restitution of $3 million. As he was led away in handcuffs, James looked at Victoria one last time. She met his gaze steadily, without anger or satisfaction. She felt nothing. He'd already taken too much of her emotional energy. She wouldn't give him any more. 6 months after the trial, Sterling Design Group was thriving. The Prometheus had broken ground, with sustainable technology companies already competing for office space. Victoria had landed 3 major international projects, including a museum in Tokyo and a residential complex in London. Her Brooklyn brownstone had been fully renovated, transformed from a war room into a home. She'd kept the apartment in Manhattan for convenience but found herself drawn more and more to the warmth and character of the brownstone. On a crisp spring morning, she stood in her garden, coffee in hand, reviewing plans for a new project, a women's shelter that would provide not just housing but dignity and hope. It was pro bono work, but it felt more important than any skyscraper. "You're up early." Victoria turned to find Nathan Cross standing at the garden gate, holding a bag from her favorite bakery. Their relationship had evolved slowly over the months since the trial. Coffee meetings became lunches, lunches became dinners, and dinners became something more. Nathan had been patient, understanding that Victoria needed time to heal, to rediscover who she was outside of the relationship that had defined her for so long. "The Tokyo team calls at 6, she said, opening the gate for him. "I figured I might as well enjoy the garden before I have to be professional." They sat together on the porch, sharing croissants and discussing everything and nothing. Nathan had left private investigation to start a security consulting firm, working with corporations to prevent exactly the kind of betrayal Victoria had experienced. "I have something to tell you," Nathan said, his tone suddenly serious. Victoria felt a familiar flutter of anxiety. "What is it?" "I've been offered a contract in London. 6 months, possibly longer. Helping a firm there implement new security protocols." Victoria absorbed this information. "That's wonderful. You should take it." "I want to. But..." He paused, looking at her intently. "I was wondering if you might want to come with me. Not permanently, but you have the London project, and Christopher can handle things here." Victoria considered this. 6 months ago, she would have immediately said no, unable to imagine leaving her company, her city, her carefully controlled world. But now. "I'll think about it," she said, and meant it. Later that day, at the office, she discussed the possibility with Christopher. "You should go," he said immediately. "The company will be fine. More than fine. You've built something that doesn't require your constant presence to survive. That's the mark of true success." Emma agreed. "You've been working nonstop for 20 years, Ms. Sterling. You deserve to explore, to live, to be more than just your work." That evening, Victoria had dinner with Sophia at their favorite restaurant in Soho. you're considering it, Sophia said, reading Victoria's expression. The London thing with Nathan. Am I crazy? Starting something new so soon after everything with James? You're not starting something new. You've been building something with Nathan for months. This is just the next step. Sophia leaned forward. Victoria, you spent 15 years in a relationship that was slowly draining you. Nathan fills you up. He supports your ambitions instead of undermining them. He sees you, really sees you. But what if? What if it doesn't work out? Then you'll have spent 6 months in London, working on an exciting project, with a man who adores you. There are worse fates. Victoria made her decision on a Thursday, exactly 1 year after discovering James's betrayal. She found Nathan at his office, reviewing security protocols for a Fortune 500 company. London, she said without preamble. I'll come to London. His face lit up in a way that made her heart skip. Really? Really? But I have conditions. We maintain separate flats. I need my own space to work. And we take things slowly. I'm still figuring out who I am outside of who I was. Whatever you need, Nathan said, pulling her into his arms. I'm just happy you're willing to try. The next 2 months were a whirlwind of preparation. Victoria restructured Sterling Design Group to function with her working remotely, promoting several team members and implementing new systems for international collaboration. She also had one last piece of business to attend to. Robert Lancaster had requested a meeting. They met at his office, a monument to glass and steel that felt cold despite its luxury. I owe you an apology, he said without preamble. My daughter's actions, while her own responsibility, reflect poorly on me and my company. Isabella made her own choices, Victoria replied. As did James. Still, I feel responsible. Which is why I want to propose something. He pulled out a folder. A joint venture. Lancaster Holdings and Sterling Design Group, partnering on a development in Singapore. Equal partners, equal profit, your complete creative control. Victoria reviewed the proposal. It was generous, almost suspiciously so. Why? She asked. Because you're the best architect in the city, possibly the country. And because I respect how you handled everything. You could have destroyed Isabella completely, but you didn't. You showed restraint, class. That's rare in our world. Victoria considered this. A year ago, she would have refused out of pride. Now, she saw the opportunity for what it was, a chance to expand her company's reach while maintaining her independence. I'll have my lawyers review it, she said. Of course. And Victoria? For what it's worth, James Mitchell was a fool. Any man who would betray you for anything or anyone deserves everything he got. As she left Lancaster's office, Victoria felt a sense of coming full circle. The man who'd warned her about the betrayal was now offering partnership, but on her terms, respecting her value. Her last night in New York was spent with her closest friends and colleagues. They gathered at the Brooklyn brownstone, filling it with laughter and warmth. Christopher presented her with a framed photo of the Sterling Design Group team, all wearing hard hats at the Prometheus construction site. So you don't forget us while you're conquering Europe, he said. Emma had compiled a scrapbook of newspaper clippings, documenting not James's fall but Victoria's rise, every project, every award, every triumph. You're an inspiration, Emma said, tears in her eyes. Not because you're perfect, but because you're strong enough to be imperfect and keep going. As the evening wound down, Victoria found herself on the roof garden with Sophia, looking out over the Manhattan skyline. I'm proud of you, Sophia said. A year ago, your world imploded. Now look at you, stronger, more successful, and open to love again. I'm terrified, Victoria admitted. What if I'm making another mistake? What if I'm misreading Nathan like I misread James? You're not the same person you were a year ago. You've learned to trust your instincts again, to see clearly. And Nathan isn't James. He's shown you who he is consistently, openly. Trust that. Trust yourself. London in autumn was everything Victoria had imagined: grey skies that made the occasional sunny day feel like a gift, history embedded in every stone, and an energy different from New York's frenetic pace but no less vital. Her flat in Notting Hill was a converted Victorian townhouse with original moldings and modern amenities. Nathan's place was a 10-minute walk away in Holland Park, close enough for convenience but far enough for independence. The London project, a mixed-use development in Shoreditch, was exactly the kind of challenge Victoria needed. The client, a progressive development firm called Future Cities, wanted something that honored the area's artistic history while providing sustainable urban living. "We don't just want a building," the lead developer, a woman named Diana Ross, explained. "We want a community." Victoria threw herself into the work, collaborating with local artists, urban planners, and environmental specialists. The design that emerged was revolutionary: living walls, communal spaces that could be reconfigured based on need, and an integrated approach to work-life balance that felt particularly relevant post-pandemic. Nathan, meanwhile, was transforming how British firms thought about corporate security. His holistic approach, protecting not just data and assets but corporate culture and employee trust, was gaining attention across Europe. Their relationship deepened in the London autumn. Long walks through Hyde Park discussing everything from architecture to philosophy. Quiet dinners in tiny restaurants hidden in maze-like streets. Weekend trips to the countryside where Victoria sketched medieval churches while Nathan read beside her. "You're different here," Nathan observed one evening as they walked along the Thames. "More relaxed. More yourself." "There's no history here," Victoria replied. "No ghosts. Every street corner doesn't remind me of something I've lost." "And what about what you found?" She looked at him, this man who'd entered her life at its darkest moment and had patiently helped her find the light again. "That's still being written." 3 months into their London adventure, Victoria received a video call from Christopher. The Prometheus had topped out, reaching its full height. The entire Sterling Design Group team had gathered on the top floor, champagne in hand. "We wish you were here," Christopher said, "but we know you're exactly where you need to be." Victoria felt tears prick her eyes. "Show me everything." For the next hour, she virtually toured her creation, seeing how her vision had become reality. The building was everything she'd dreamed, a testament to sustainable design and human-centered architecture. That night, she found Nathan waiting in her flat with champagne of their own. "Christopher called me," he explained. "Thought we should celebrate." As they toasted on her terrace, overlooking the London lights, Victoria felt a contentment she hadn't experienced in years. Maybe ever. "I love you," she said suddenly, surprising herself with the admission. Nathan set down his glass and cupped her face gently. "I love you too. Have for months. But I wanted you to be ready to hear it." "I wasn't. But I am now." The email arrived on a Tuesday morning in January. Victoria was in her London office, reviewing final plans for the Shoreditch development, when Emma forwarded it with a note: "You need to see this." It was from James. He was being released early for good behavior and cooperation with authorities in uncovering a larger embezzlement ring in prison. He wanted to meet. "Victoria, I know I have no right to ask anything of you. But I need to apologize, properly, in person. Not for my benefit, but for yours. You deserve to hear the truth about why I did what I did. If you're willing, I'll be at the Carlisle Hotel bar on January 15th at 3 p.m. If not, I understand. James." Victoria stared at the email for a long moment, then called Nathan. "He wants to meet," she said without preamble. "Are you going to?" "I don't know. Should I? That's not for me to decide." What do you want? Victoria considered this. I want to understand. Not forgive, but understand. How someone I trusted so completely could betray me so thoroughly. Then go. I'll come with you if you want. No, this is something I need to do alone. But knowing you're there, supporting me, makes it possible. She flew back to New York on January 14th. The city felt different, familiar but no longer home. She stayed at the Brooklyn Brownstone, now managed by a property company but still hers. Christopher and Emma met her for dinner, updating her on the company's continued success. They'd landed 2 more major projects and hired 5 new architects. The company was thriving without her daily presence, which was both gratifying and slightly melancholic. You built something that transcends you, Christopher said. That's the ultimate achievement. The next day, Victoria arrived at the Carlisle 5 minutes late, a small power play, but one that felt necessary. James was already there, sitting in a corner booth, looking older, thinner, his former confidence replaced by something more tentative. He stood when he saw her, and she was struck by how ordinary he looked. Prison had stripped away the polish, the carefully maintained facade. This was James at his most essential, and he was unremarkable. Thank you for coming, he said as she sat down. You have 15 minutes. He nodded, accepting the limitation. I've had a lot of time to think. About what I did, why I did it. The easy answer is greed, ego, stupidity. But the truth is more complex and more pathetic. Victoria remained silent, waiting. I was jealous, James continued. Of you. Of your talent, your vision, your ability to create something from nothing. I was good at what I did, but you were brilliant. And everyone knew it. Every client, every employee, every journalist who wrote about us, they all knew you were the real genius behind Sterling. So you decided to destroy me? I decided to take what I thought I deserved. In my twisted logic, I'd earned half of your success by proximity. By managing the business side so you could create. I convinced myself that without me, you'd never have succeeded. And Isabella? James winced. Isabella was validation. She saw me as the successful businessman I wanted to be, not as your supporting player. With her, I was the star. And now? Now she won't return my calls, and I'm a convicted felon who'll never work in architecture again. He paused. I destroyed my life trying to steal yours. The irony isn't lost on me. Victoria studied him, this man she'd once loved, and felt pity. Not forgiveness, but pity. I don't forgive you, she said clearly. What you did was unforgivable. But I also don't hate you anymore. You're just nothing to me. A lesson learned. A chapter closed. James nodded, tears in his eyes. I know. I just wanted you to know that you didn't do anything wrong. You loved authentically, trusted completely. The failure was entirely mine. Victoria stood. Goodbye, James. Victoria, wait. He pulled out an envelope. I wrote you a letter. Everything I couldn't say. You don't have to read it. But if you ever wonder about the specifics, about the timeline, about the why of it all, it's all in there. She took the envelope without comment and left. Outside, she breathed deeply of the cold January air, feeling lighter than she had in months. Closure, she realized, wasn't about forgiveness or forgetting. It was about moving forward without the weight of unanswered questions. Victoria returned to London with a sense of finality. The meeting with James had closed a door she hadn't realized was still ajar. On the plane, she read his letter once, then left it in the airplane magazine pocket. Someone else's tragedy now. The Shoreditch project was entering its final phase. The structure was complete, the interior work beginning. Victoria spent her days on site, working with contractors and artists to bring her vision to life. The development was already being hailed as a model for sustainable urban living, with inquiries coming in from cities across Europe. Nathan's contract had been extended another 6 months, and they'd settled into a comfortable rhythm. Not quite living together but not quite apart. Their relationship had a maturity, a deliberateness that Victoria had never experienced with James. Every step was chosen, not assumed. "I have news," Nathan announced one evening over dinner at their favorite gastropub. "I've been offered a partnership in a security firm here in London. Or I can return to New York and expand my company there. The choice is mine." Victoria felt her heart rate quicken. "What do you want?" "I want to be where you are." "So the real question is, what do you want?" Victoria had been grappling with the same question. Sterling Design Group was thriving without her daily presence, but it was still her company, her legacy. London had given her space to heal and grow, but was it home? "I don't know," she admitted. "Part of me loves it here. The freedom, the anonymity, the new beginnings. But part of me misses New York, misses my company, misses building something with my own hands." "You don't have to choose," Nathan said. "You could do both. Split your time. London office, New York office. International presence." The idea had merit. Victoria was already managing projects across multiple time zones. Why not make it official? Over the next month, she developed a plan. Sterling Design Group International, with offices in New York and London. Christopher would run New York operations, she'd oversee London, and they'd collaborate on global projects. It was ambitious but achievable. "You're building an empire," Sophia said during a video call. "A real one this time, without anyone else's name on it." The Singapore project with Lancaster Holdings had also materialized, requiring trips to Asia that expanded Victoria's vision even further. Robert Lancaster proved to be a respectful partner, never overstepping, always deferring to her creative vision. "You've changed how I think about business," he told her during one trip. "It doesn't have to be cutthroat. Success doesn't require destroying others. It requires building something worth protecting," Victoria replied. Spring arrived in London with unexpected warmth. The Shoreditch development was nearly complete, and the opening gala was set for May. Victoria stood in the central courtyard, watching as the last of the living walls were installed. The space was everything she'd envisioned, organic yet structured, communal yet private, innovative yet timeless. Diana Ross, the lead developer, stood beside her. "You've created something special here, Victoria. Not just a building, but a new way of thinking about urban living." That evening, Victoria found Nathan on her terrace, setting up a telescope. "What's this?" she asked. "Clear night, full moon. Thought we might do some stargazing." He paused, looking nervous. "And I have something to ask you." Victoria's heart skipped, but Nathan quickly shook his head. "Not that. Not yet. You said slow, and I meant it. But I do want to ask, would you consider moving in together? Properly. Finding a place that's ours, not yours or mine." Victoria considered this. A year ago, the idea would have terrified her. Now, it felt like a natural progression. "Yes," she said simply. "But I want a home office with proper drafting tables. And I want a library with those rolling ladder things." "Deal." They spent the rest of the evening looking at stars and planning their future home, each detail a small act of trust, a brick in the foundation they were building together. The next morning brought unexpected news. Emma called from New York, excitement in her voice. "You've been nominated for the Pritzker Prize," she said breathlessly. "The architecture equivalent of the Nobel. The ceremony is in Chicago in June." Victoria sat down slowly. The Pritzker was the highest honor in architecture, something she'd dreamed of but never expected, especially not so soon after the turmoil of the past 2 years. How, she managed. The Prometheus, the Tokyo Museum, the Shoreditch development. But more than that, the committee cited your resilience in the face of professional adversity and your commitment to sustainable, human-centered design. Victoria, you're being recognized not just for your work but for who you are. After the call, Victoria sat in stunned silence. Nathan found her there an hour later, still processing. Good news or bad news? He asked, reading her expression. Good. Overwhelming, but good. She explained about the Pritzker. Nathan pulled her into his arms. You deserve this. You deserve all of it. The Shoreditch opening was a triumph. The great and good of London's architecture and development community gathered to celebrate what many were calling a new paradigm in urban design. Victoria, in an emerald green gown that brought out her eyes, moved through the crowd with a confidence she'd never possessed before. You're glowing, Nathan whispered during a brief moment alone. I'm happy, she replied, surprising herself with the simple truth of it. Christopher had flown in from New York with several team members. Seeing them in her London world felt like two parts of herself merging. The New York Times wants to do a profile, Christopher informed her. Not about the scandal, but about the comeback. The phoenix rising from the ashes narrative. Tell them I'll think about it. Michael Brennan was also there, having invested in the Shoreditch development. Victoria, you've outdone yourself. This makes the Prometheus look conservative. The Prometheus was about proving I could build at scale. This is about proving we can build for people. As the evening progressed, Victoria found herself on the roof garden, looking out over London. A year and a half ago, she'd stood on a different roof, in a different city, watching her world crumble. Now, she stood in a world of her own making. Miss Sterling? She turned to find a young woman, perhaps 25, with eager eyes and a nervous smile. I'm Lily Zhang. I just graduated from the Bartlett School of Architecture. I wanted to thank you. Your story, your strength, it inspired me to stay in architecture even when my family wanted me to choose something more stable. Architecture isn't stable? Victoria asked with a smile. You know what I mean. It's hard, competitive, sometimes cruel. But seeing you overcome what you did, build what you've built, it showed me it's possible. Victoria looked at this young woman and saw herself 20 years ago, full of dreams and determination. It's more than possible, she said. It's necessary. The world needs architects who build with heart, not just ambition. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. Later, as the party wound down, Nathan found her in the courtyard, sitting on a bench she'd designed specifically to encourage conversation. Ready to go home? He asked. The word home resonated differently now. Not a place but a feeling, not a building but a life under construction. Almost. I just want to sit here for a moment longer. Take it all in. Nathan sat beside her, taking her hand. What are you thinking? That I spent so long building walls to protect myself, I forgot to leave doors for joy to enter. This, she gestured to the building around them, isn't just architecture. It's autobiography. Every line, every space, every choice reflects who I've become. And who is that? Victoria considered. Someone who builds bridges instead of walls. Someone who knows that the strongest structures are built on truth, not deception. Someone who's learned that success means nothing if you achieve it alone. June in Chicago was humid and electric with summer energy. The Pritzker Prize ceremony was being held at the J. Pritzker Pavilion, an architectural marvel in itself. Victoria stood backstage, adjusting the simple black dress she'd chosen for the occasion. Nathan was in the audience, along with her mother, who'd flown in from Florida, Sophia, Christopher, Emma, and her entire New York team. The citation was read by the committee chair, Victoria Sterling receives this award not only for her innovative designs that seamlessly blend sustainability with human needs but for her unwavering commitment to architectural integrity in the face of personal and professional challenges. Her work reminds us that architecture is not just about building structures but about creating spaces where human dignity and environmental responsibility converge. As Victoria took the stage, she saw James's ghost one last time, not the man himself, but the shadow he'd cast over her life. And then she let him go, completely and finally. Architecture, she began her acceptance speech, is an act of faith. Every building begins as an idea, intangible and uncertain. We take that idea and through skill, determination, and collaboration, we make it real. But architecture is also an act of vulnerability. Every design reveals something about its creator, our hopes, our values, our vision for how people should live. 2 years ago, I learned that vulnerability can be exploited, that trust can be weaponized. I could have let that knowledge make me cynical, closed off, safe. Instead, I chose to see it as an opportunity to rebuild, not just my career but myself. To design a life that reflected my true values, not the ones imposed on me by others' expectations. This award belongs not just to me but to everyone who stood by me during that rebuilding. To my team at Sterling Design Group, who reminded me that great architecture is always a collective effort. To my friends and family, who showed me that the strongest foundations are built on love, not fear. And to the clients who trusted me with their visions even when my own vision was clouded. We are living in a time when the very concept of structure is being questioned: social structures, environmental structures, economic structures. As architects, we have a responsibility to imagine and build better ones. Structures that include rather than exclude, that sustain rather than deplete, that inspire rather than oppress. The buildings we design today will outlive us all. Let them stand as testaments not to our egos but to our empathy. Let them be spaces where people can become their best selves, where communities can thrive, where the future can unfold with hope rather than fear. Thank you for this honor. I accept it not as an ending but as a beginning, a foundation on which to build even greater things. The applause was thunderous. As Victoria left the stage, she was engulfed by her team, her family, her chosen family. In that moment, surrounded by love and recognition, she understood that success wasn't about what you built but who you built it with. 3 months after the Pritzker, Victoria was back in London, deep in plans for a new project, a school in Kenya that would be entirely self-sustaining, powered by solar energy and built with local materials. It was another pro bono project, but these had become as important to her as the commercial ones. Nathan had been acting strangely for a week, nervous and distracted. Victoria assumed it was about the new flat they'd finally found in Hampstead, a Victorian conversion with original features and modern amenities, including the home office and library they'd dreamed about. "Let's go for a walk," he suggested one evening, despite the threatening rain clouds. They walked through Hampstead Heath, the wild parkland that felt like countryside in the middle of London. Nathan led her to Parliament Hill, where they'd shared their first kiss months ago. "Victoria," he began, then stopped, starting again. "When I first met you, you were in the middle of the worst crisis of your life. I was supposed to be professionally detached, but from that first meeting, I knew you were extraordinary. Not because of your success or your talent, but because of your strength, your integrity, your refusal to let betrayal make you bitter." He dropped to one knee, pulling out a small velvet box. Inside was a ring that was nothing like the ostentatious diamond James had given her. This was an architectural marvel in miniature, a band of platinum that curved like one of her buildings, set with a sapphire the color of blueprint ink. "I know you said slow, and I've tried, but I also know that life is uncertain and precious and shouldn't be wasted. Victoria Sterling, will you marry me? Not because I want to possess you or control you or share your success, but because I want to build a life with you, brick by brick, day by day, with honesty and love as our foundation?" Victoria looked at this man who'd entered her life as an investigator and became her salvation, not because he rescued her but because he empowered her to rescue herself. "Yes," she said, her voice strong and clear. "Yes, I'll marry you." As Nathan slipped the ring onto her finger, the threatening clouds broke, drenching them both. They laughed, kissing in the rain like a movie scene, except this was real life, messier, more complicated, but ultimately more beautiful than any fiction. They were married 6 months later, not in a grand ceremony but in the courtyard of the Shoreditch development, surrounded by the buildings Victoria had designed and the people who'd supported her journey. Her mother officiated, having gotten ordained online specifically for the occasion. "You two have already built something together," her mother said during the ceremony. "Trust, respect, love. This is just the blueprint making it official." Christopher was Nathan's best man, having become close friends with him over the months. Sophia was Victoria's maid of honor, wearing a dress Victoria had designed specifically for her. "You did it," Sophia whispered as they prepared to walk down the aisle. "You rebuilt everything, better than before." "We did it," Victoria corrected. "None of us stands alone." Victoria stood in her Tokyo office, looking out at Mount Fuji in the distance. Sterling Design Group International now had offices in New York, London, Tokyo, and Singapore. The company employed over 200 architects and had projects on every continent. But success was measured differently now. Yes, there were awards. The Pritzker had been followed by the Reba Gold Medal and an honorary doctorate from MIT. Yes, there was financial success. The company was valued at over $500 million. But the real measures were more personal. The school in Kenya had been completed and had become a model for sustainable education architecture across Africa. The women's shelter in New York had helped hundreds of women rebuild their lives. The Shoreditch development had inspired similar projects in cities around the world. "Ready to go?" Nathan asked, appearing in the doorway. They were taking a month off, their first real vacation in 2 years, to travel through Southeast Asia, not for work but for joy. Their daughter, Elena, now 2 years old, was with them, already showing signs of her mother's spatial intelligence and her father's observational skills. "Almost," Victoria said, saving her final files. "Just sending the last notes to Christopher." Christopher had become co-CEO, running day-to-day operations while Victoria focused on design and vision. Emma had risen to Chief Operations Officer, her organizational brilliance finally fully recognized. As for James, Victoria had heard through the grapevine that he was working as a construction supervisor in Ohio, having lost his architecture license permanently. Isabella Romano had reinvented herself as a life coach, of all things, speaking about learning from failure. Victoria felt no satisfaction in their falls, only a distant kind of pity. "Mama, look." Elena called out, pointing at a bird outside the window. Victoria picked up her daughter, Nathan wrapping his arms around both of them. This was the structure that mattered most, the family they'd built, the love they'd chosen, the future they were designing together. "You know what I realized?" Victoria said to Nathan as they prepared to leave. "What's that?" "James did me a favor. If he hadn't betrayed me, I'd still be in that relationship, successful but not fulfilled, accomplished but not happy. His betrayal forced me to demolish everything and rebuild from scratch. And what I built the second time was so much better." "The Victoria 2.0, Nathan said with a smile. "The real Victoria. The one who was always there, just waiting for the facades to fall." As they left the office, Victoria looked back one more time. The setting sun turned the glass and steel golden, like a promise. She'd built this, not alone but with help, not in spite of her scars but because of them. The elevator doors closed, and Victoria Sterling, architect, survivor, Phoenix, descended into her life, ready for whatever came next, knowing she had the tools and the team to build anything she could imagine. In the end, the greatest revenge wasn't destruction but construction. Not tearing someone else down but building yourself up. Not living in the past but architecting the future. And Victoria's future, like her buildings, was built to last.